Okay, so imagine, right? Imagine for a second that you wake up from this totally bizarre dream, and instead of thinking, oh, that was a weird one, you genuinely believe it's a message from the gods, like a straight up cosmic telegram delivered while you were snoozing. That's how people view dreams for centuries.
Yeah, it's wild when you think about it, right? It really shows you how far we've come in understanding the mind. It wasn't some mystical hotline. It was your brain doing brain things.
Totally. And that's what we're diving into today. We're going to unpack some of the big ideas from Sigmund Freud's dream psychology. And let me tell you, this book is dense. It's like PhD level dream analysis, but you sent me some really juicy excerpts. I think our listeners are going to get a lot out of this.
Freud was, well, he was a total game changer. And it's important to remember he was a doctor. He worked with real people, real patients dealing with all sorts of mental stuff. And he started to see these connections, like these weird dreams his patients were having. They weren't random. They were linked to what was going on in their lives.
He wasn't just like passively observing, was he? He was collecting dreams like they were Pokemon cards, comparing them to these super detailed case histories of his patients. It was like a giant puzzle he was trying to solve.
That's a great way to put it. He was incredibly methodical. And for the time, his approach was revolutionary. He was saying, look, I'm not just making this stuff up. I'm basing my theories on data, on evidence.
Which probably didn't go over too well with everyone back then, right? It was a totally new way of looking at dreams, not as mystical mumbo-jumbo, but as a reflection of the mind.
Definitely. Some folks just weren't having it. They thought studying dreams was a waste of time. Others, well, Freud thought some people were maybe scared of what their dreams might reveal, you know?
Yeah.
All those hidden desires and anxieties bubbling up to the surface.
It's almost like dreams were holding up this mirror, right? Showing people parts of themselves they didn't want to see. And Freud also saw this link between dreams and mental illness, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He noticed that the strange symbols and images people saw in their dreams also popped up in the behavior of people who were mentally ill. Like there was this common thread of the unconscious at play.
Okay, so confession time. I tried to read Freud's original work, and, well, let's just say it wasn't exactly a page-turner. Super detailed, lots of jargon. You really got to be dedicated to get through it.
Oh, absolutely. It can be very dense. It was written for a scholarly audience, not exactly beach reading material.
And that's why we're doing this deep dive. We're going to break down some of Freud's key insights in plain English. We want you, our listener, to really grasp what he was getting at. So, ready to get Freudian. Here's the first big takeaway. Dreams have a meaning. Full stop.
That was huge. Most doctors at the time thought dreams were just random noise, but Freud said, nope, there's something going on here. He actually thought those old superstitions about dreams having meaning were closer to the truth than current scientific thought.
And he came to this realization through his work with, what was it called, psychoanalysis. That was his method for getting to the root of psychological issues like phobias and anxieties.
Right, psychoanalysis. And he realized it could also apply to dreams. He'd seen how effective it was for uncovering hidden causes of problems in waking life. He thought, hey, if it works for phobias, maybe it can crack the code of dreams too.
Like if you could understand why someone was terrified of spiders, maybe you could also figure out why they dreamt they were being chased by a giant spider, right?
Exactly. And Freud was all about practicality. He wanted to help people. He figured if he could understand what dreams meant, maybe he could use that knowledge to treat mental illness more effectively.
Makes sense. And to illustrate how this psychoanalysis thing worked for dream interpretation, he actually analyzed one of his own dreams in the book. It's this kind of bizarre one about a dinner party with spinach and a woman touching his knee. So let's just jump right in. What was that all about?
Okay, so picture this. Freud is at a dinner party, right? Or maybe it's one of those fixed price meals where you pay one price for a set menu. And in the dream, he sees spinach being served. But here's where it gets interesting. Mrs. E.L., this woman he knows, is sitting next to him. She's giving him all her attention, and then she puts her hand on his knee. Freud, being Freud, he removes her hand, and then she says, but you have always had such beautiful eyes. And then he sees these disembodied eyes, like a sketch or something.
It's like a fever dream. So how did he even begin to unpack that?
Well, he started by breaking it down piece by piece, like the dinner party setting. That reminded him of a taxi ride he had taken the day before where he was worried about the fare getting too high. And that anxiety, that fear of not getting his money's worth, it connected to a deeper worry about his finances in general. So, something as simple as the setting of the dream can be linked to much bigger concerns.
Interesting. And what about that part where the woman is giving him all this attention?
Right, so that reminded him of a time when he was courting his wife, and they were being sneaky and affectionate under the table. But in the dream, it's not his wife, it's Mrs. E.L. And get this, she was the daughter of someone he owed money to.
No way. So there's this whole layer of guilt and obligation mixed in there.
Exactly. And then that strange comment about the beautiful eyes. Freud saw that as a sarcastic remark, like she was saying he always gets things for free. Which, of course, wasn't true. But then he remembered that his friend did give him a free ride in his cab that day. So maybe there's a connection there, this unconscious desire for things to come without a cost.
But even the spinach had a meaning, right?
Oh, yeah, even the spinach. It reminded him of a recent dinner where there was a child with, you guessed it, beautiful eyes. So you see all these little pieces, the setting, the characters, the random details, they all connect to real events and emotions from Freud's life. It's like his mind is weaving them together into this strange story.
Okay, so this is blowing my mind a little bit. So are you saying every tiny detail in our dreams means something? Like if I dream about a talking banana, there's some deep psychological reason behind it.
Well, not necessarily every single detail, but what Freud is saying is that dreams aren't just random nonsense. They're a product of our minds, and they often reflect our desires, anxieties, even things we're not consciously aware of.
So it's like if we can figure out the language of dreams, we can learn a lot about ourselves.
Exactly. And that's what Freud was trying to do. He was trying to create a map of the unconscious, using dreams as his guide.
And speaking of maps, I think it's time to talk about one of Freud's biggies, wish fulfillment.
Ah, yes, wish fulfillment. That's where things get really interesting. And to understand this concept, Freud points to the dreams of children. They're like wish fulfillment 101.
Because kids are just so straightforward, right? They want
Oh.
something, they dream about it.
Exactly. Freud gives all these cute examples, like this little girl who was denied food during the day. Guess what she dreamt about?
Strawberries. Ice cream.
Close. Tawberry. Eggs. Pap. She dreamt about the food she was craving. Simple as that.
Makes sense. What other examples did he give?
Well, there was this boy who was only allowed one cherry. He dreamt about someone eating all the cherries. A girl whose trip to the beach got cut short dreamt about the trip continuing. A boy who couldn't climb a mountain dreamt about reaching the summit.
So they were all getting what they wanted in their dreams, even if they couldn't have it in real life.
Precisely. It's like their little minds were saying, well, if I can't have it now, at least I can have it in my dreams. And for Freud, this was a key insight. It showed that dreams could be a way of satisfying those unmet desires, even if it was only in a fantasy world.
Okay, so that makes sense for kids. But adult dreams are way more complex, right?
Right.
Like I don't usually dream about getting that extra slice of pizza I wanted.
Right, adult dreams get a lot more complicated. The wishes are still there, but they're not so obvious. They get all jumbled up and disguised.
And that's where Freud's idea of the dream mechanism comes in. He talks about things like condensation and displacement, right?
Exactly. These are like the tools our minds use to create dreams. And they often make the dream a lot weirder and harder to understand.
Okay, so let's break it down. What's condensation?
So condensation is like the dream version of a zip file. It takes all these different ideas, emotions, memories, and squishes them together into one image or scene. It's like the dream is trying to save space.
So it's like taking a whole photo album and cramming it into one tiny picture frame.
Exactly. It's super efficient, but it can make the picture look really strange and distorted. Freud gives this example of his own dream about a swimming bath. In the dream, the bathers are separated by a barrier and someone is pulled from the water. But these details actually came from 3 different sources: a memory from his puberty and 2 paintings he had recently seen. His mind took these separate things and combined them into one weird dream scene.
So it's like a remix, a mashup of different experiences.
Exactly. And then there's displacement. That's when the emotional intensity of the dream gets shifted from something important to something seemingly unimportant. It's like the dream is trying to hide the real meaning.
So it's like putting a big, scary mask on something that's actually quite small and harmless.
Yeah, it's like a distraction technique. In Freud's dream, the underlying wish for free, unconditional love gets displaced onto the spinach and the beautiful eyes. Those details become the focus, even though they're not really the main point.
It's like those magic tricks where the magician makes you look at one hand while they're doing the real trick with the other hand.
Exactly. And Freud also noted that it's often the small, seemingly insignificant events from our day that trigger these big, complex dreams. Like in his own dream, the free cab ride wasn't a big deal on its own, but it connected to deeper anxieties about money and relationships.
Okay, so this is all starting to make sense. But why all the disguise? Why can't our dreams just be straightforward?
Well, that's where repression comes in. It's this psychological defense mechanism that keeps all those uncomfortable or unacceptable thoughts and desires hidden away in the unconscious.
So it's like our minds have this built-in sensor that's constantly filtering what's allowed to enter our consciousness, and dreams are no exception.
Exactly. And according to Freud, the content of our dreams, even though it seems weird and random, is actually carefully curated by this sensor. It's like a nightclub bouncer, only allowing in the thoughts and desires that are deemed safe and acceptable.
So anything too spicy, too controversial gets turned away at the door.
Exactly. And this censorship is especially strong when it comes to sexual desires. Freud believed that society and our own internalized sense of morality puts a lot of pressure on us to repress our sexual urges. So these desires often can't appear directly in our dreams. They have to be disguised, symbolized.
Okay, so this is getting a little schemy, but I get it. Our minds are trying to protect us from ourselves, even when we're asleep.
Right. But even though these desires are hidden, there's still a powerful force shaping our dreams. And this is where dream symbolism becomes crucial for understanding what those dreams are really trying to tell us.
So Freud thought that certain objects or actions in dreams could have symbolic meanings, often related to sex.
Exactly. He saw this connection between the symbols that appear in dreams and the symbols that appear in mythology, folklore, even jokes. It was like this universal language of the unconscious.
So it's like our minds are using metaphors, but in a visual way.
Precisely, and Freud identified a whole bunch of common dream symbols and what they represented. For example, things like penetrating into narrow spaces or opening locked doors, he saw as symbols of sexual intercourse.
Okay, now that makes sense. I've had dreams like that before. What other symbols did he talk about?
Well, he talked about landscapes and familiar places representing the mother's body, particularly if there was a sense of having been there before. Dreams about water, like swimming or drowning, he often linked to birth or anxieties about birth.
Water, birth, yeah, I can see that. What about those creepy dreams about burglars or ghosts?
Those he linked back to childhood anxieties about being watched at night, often related to bedwetting. Even everyday objects, like a woman's hat or a man's tie, could have symbolic meanings related to male or female genitalia. It's pretty wild when you think about it.
It's like learning a whole new language. But Freud also admitted that not everything in a dream is necessarily symbolic, right?
Right. He was careful to say that symbolism is just one tool for understanding dreams. You also need to consider the dreamer's own associations and the context of their life.
So it's not like a dream dictionary where every symbol has a fixed meaning.
Exactly. It's more nuanced than that. And he provides all these detailed case studies from his practice to illustrate how he used symbolism, along with other techniques, to interpret dreams. Like, there's the dream of the young woman and her hat, which he analyzes in terms of her fears of temptation, and the dream of the patient who dreams about a train journey, which he connects to her anxieties about her father and her own sexuality.
Okay, so we've covered wish fulfillment, dream mechanisms, symbolism, and the role of repression. My head is officially spinning. But there's one more big piece of the puzzle, right? The whole point of dreaming. Why do we even do it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Freud tackles it head-on. He revisits that dream about the father and the burning candle, which at first glance seems to be about concern for the son, not a wish. But he argues that even in dreams like this, there's an element of wish fulfillment at play.
So he's saying that even dreams that seem negative or disturbing can still be about satisfying some unconscious desire.
Right. And he emphasizes that the wishes driving our dreams often stem from our childhood, those primal desires that are so powerful and deeply ingrained in our psyche.
So even though we grow up, those childhood wishes are still there, lurking in the shadows of our unconscious.
Exactly. And they can find their way into our dreams in all sorts of disguised and symbolic ways. Freud gives the example of this woman who, in waking life, is very polite and complimentary about her friend's fiancé. But in her dream, she gives a very hesitant and non-committal response.
So her true feelings, the ones she couldn't express in real life, came out in her dream.
Exactly. And that brings us to the idea of day residues. Freud noticed that events from our day often pop up in our dreams, but they're not just random intrusions. He believed they get connected to these deeper unconscious wishes through a process he called transference.
So it's like the day residue provides a hook for the unconscious wish to latch onto.
Exactly. It gives the wish a way to express itself in a disguised form. And this is all connected to how our minds operate at different levels. Freud talks about the primary process, which is the dominant mode of the unconscious, and the secondary process, which governs our conscious thoughts.
Okay, so the primary process is all about immediate gratification, like a baby wanting food now. And the secondary process is more about delaying gratification, thinking things through, being realistic.
Exactly. And during sleep, the secondary process takes a back seat, letting the primary process take over. That's why dreams can be so illogical and full of raw emotion. It's like our minds are regressing to a more childlike state.
And finally, we get to the big kahuna, the unconscious itself. Freud's whole exploration of dreams was really an attempt to map this uncharted territory of the mind, wasn't it?
Absolutely. He saw dreams as a royal road to the unconscious, a way to glimpse into this hidden realm where all our deepest desires, fears, and repressed memories reside.
And he challenged the idea that consciousness is the only part of us that matters, right? He showed there's a whole lot going on beneath the surface, influencing our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in ways we're not even aware of.
Right. And he used all sorts of analogies to try to explain this complex relationship between the conscious and the unconscious, like the analogy of the sensor, filtering what's allowed to pass from one realm to the other, or the analogy of light refraction, where the information gets distorted as it travels from the unconscious to the conscious mind.
Okay, so this has been a whirlwind tour of Freudian dream theory, wish fulfillment, dream mechanisms, symbolism, repression, the unconscious. It's a lot to take in.
It is. But the main takeaway is that dreams are meaningful. They're not just random noise. They're a product of our minds, and they can tell us a lot about ourselves if we're willing to listen.
And even though Freud's theories have been debated and refined over the years, there's no denying that he revolutionized the way we think about dreams.
Absolutely. He gave us a whole new vocabulary for understanding our inner lives.
So to wrap things up, here's a challenge for you, our listener. Think about a recurring dream you've had. Now try to apply what we've talked about today. Wish fulfillment, symbolism, the whole shebang. What might that dream be trying to tell you about yourself? Maybe there's a hidden desire, a fear, a memory you've repressed. See what happens when you start looking at your dreams through a Freudian lens. You might be surprised by what you discover.
It's definitely an exploration worth taking. And who knows, maybe you'll even unlock some hidden secrets about your own mind.
And on that note, I think it's time for us to wake up from this Freudian deep dive. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Until next time, sweet dreams.